Hi, everybody. But thank you for joining. So we are Getachew, myself, and then there's other people not here right now, Sylvia and Becky and Thomas. We are the Biogeoscience Early Career Board, and we've been wanting this year to organize some webinars on different topics. And the goal was for them to be broad enough that they would interest not just the BG community, but also other communities from EGU. And I'll just start before presenting Davide by sharing a document on if you early career and that you part of the BG section. This is how, okay, I hope do you see the link in the chat? Yeah, this is a link to a document on how to join the ECS mailing list, the BG ECS mailing list, sorry, specifically. And so, because so far we have plenty of early career people who can be joined through the BG mailing list, but we have a lot of them missing in our BG ECS mailing list. So we'd love to have you there to let you know of the events that we organize and the happy hour that we'll organize at the annual meeting. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Davide, who gave us the honor to join us today to talk about inclusiveness and diversity in academia. Davide is a research director in climate physics at the LSCE, which is the Laboratoire of Environmental and Climate Sciences near Paris. He's a CNRS research director, and he's an expert on extreme weather events such as cold spells, heat waves, cyclones, and severe thunderstorms. Since 2025, he serves as a lead author for Chapter 3 of Working Group 1 in the upcoming IPCC report. He is also actively engaged in promoting diversity and inclusion in science, both through institutional initiatives and public communication. And Davide, I'll leave you the floor.
Thank you very much, Elsa, and hello to all the friends of the G community. It's very nice, and also hello online to those who we will be watching this seminar afterwards. So yes, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very thankful for this invitation. Although I have to make a disclaimer, as always, when we do this kind of things, there is a big imposter syndrome in the sense that I'm not sure that I'm the best person to deliver this seminar and to discuss this topic because, well, it's something that we can approach, of course, from different angle and from different approaches. So I will give you my something that is, of course, some definitions, but also some objective data, and try to see how this problem of inclusivity and fostering a diverse and inclusive environment is not trivial, and there are still a long way to go to really achieve something that we can define as satisfactory, even if in our on work environment that is scientific research. So I will share my screen and then you tell me if you can see it. Yeah, and it's of course you will have perhaps question while I'm chatting, or you can have, of course, a different point of view. So feel free to ask your questions in the chat, and then we will see them later. So we will touch on this concept that are diversity, equity, and inclusivity, and so we need some kind of definition. And the first thing that when we talk about this is make a very non-trivial definition between what is already sex and gender, because we will have several discussion about well, several data about the gender balance. So it's very important that we understand that sex is something that is referred to the biology, and so to the biological characteristics of men and women in terms of their organs and in terms of the chromosome and this is something that comes from physiology, but there is a broader concept instead that comes from the society, and is the concept of gender, that is more related on our perception and also our own perception of femininity and masculinity, which can vary and can vary in times and place between culture and even for ourselves in our own life. So this notion of gender that goes makes evolve the definition of sex that instead comes from biology, is something that appeared in the 70s and was put forward by the feminist theorists, and this now widespread, and is the concept that we will use during this presentation. Then we have to define a bit what is diversity. Okay, so diversity is something that it's not only cultural, but is a concept that is multicultural. So it's related to gender, race, ethnicity, age, sexuality, language, educational background. So it's really something that spans a lot, and that we have to see across all these categories. If we really want to talk about diversity, we have to be open, and we have to really look at this concept in many different categories. And of course, then we have the concept that comes together, that is how we can build an inclusive environment using this concept of diversity. That is the idea of treating all employees or our colleagues equally, with the same availability of opportunities, resources, and the possibility of success. And no one employee has to normally be assumed to have an advantage based on race, gender, background, or other precursor to the employment. This is the way we can really, if we trigger this inclusion in our workplace, immediately we will have diversity, because we will not treat any employee based on some advantage that then will make a sort of selection that is not based on the idea of constructing the work environment, but just on something that is a pre-assumption. So this is why we should aim at this, because of course there is fairness and inclusivities bring opportunities to representation of all individuals regarding their background, and their concept that comes from the ethics of respect and dignities. That means that we have to valorize and recognize contribution that comes from diverse background. So these are concepts that comes from responsibility and justice. That is a moral responsibility to contribute to this society, that we want to have it more equitable and aligned with ethical principles. Okay, so I think that this is very important, and it's something that we are losing a little bit in the very last few years, because it goes a bit against the idea of it goes against the idea that is the stronger that can win in this world. It's not the stronger, it's the ensemble of individuals with their different abilities that can contribute to the societies. And if we want this to be true, we have to distinguish between equality and equity. And this example that is sometimes debated, I still find that it is very useful, is the way we should, if we want to go towards equity, envision our societies. That is, if we want to reach the fruits on the trees, okay, and we have a different height, we cannot just say that we put the same stairs for people having different height, because in this case we have equality, we have the same stairs, but then we still have the problem that the tallest can reach the fruits with more facility, and the shortest they cannot reach the fruits. Instead, what we aim when we build a society that is based on equity is to have different states that take into account this diversity that we have in terms of sites of people so that they can all reach the fruits and they can all contribute to collecting the fruits. Okay, immediately you see that if we have equity in this trivial example, we collect more fruits, okay? Because we can use the three people that are here in the picture, they can all collect the fruit and they can all contribute to this task. Instead, with equality, we are wasting most of the resources because we are giving more chance to only the tallest person here to collect fruits, but for sure they cannot do the work of three. And this concept that this equity is better suited for building a better society is not something that I'm making up today for this webinar, but is actually concept that is proved in economical and also financial output. It's not surprising because the example that I shared with you that is very simple then repeats in terms of economical gains when we reduce the gap, for example, in gender in when we remove barriers. So you can see here that in these let's say graphs that has been done by the International Monetary Fund, we see the economic gains that are from gender inclusion when we remove this kind of barrier, and are all output that are positive. So the more we remove gender barriers, the better we will be the output in terms of also financial output for our societies. It goes exactly with the example that I've shown. Everyone will then be able to contribute to the society. In terms of what we have more in research and what we can think of what can be the benefit of having a diverse team, we have, of course, fresher perspective that leads to more creative solution because there is not only one way of thinking to the solution of the problems, and they are more effective for the problem solving because they can lead to something that just one group is not thinking about. And then, of course, that if we have a more diverse group, we immediately see that we have more fairness because we will have different voice that will bring different concern and will know how to approach a problem from the point of view of all the voices that are in the team. And of course, we can have, if we think to a more, let's say, global research environment, even more competitiveness because we will have, and sorry, there is some typo, talents that we can attract from diverse background and that contribute from all over the world with their different background. But where are so this is in principle is what we should have already after decades of having this kind of discussion. I say that if we are at this point of reflection and we have all these definitions that now are sort of clear and meaningful, okay, in terms of equity, diversity, inclusiveness, we own a lot to the feminist movement that start from the 70s, and I would say sometimes all together with other movements that start in other minorities, such as, for example, the LGBT minorities, but also some ethnic minorities, and concepts that build up for many years now. Okay, so we can see in the very, and now I'm sorry, but there is the second part of the presentation where I will go through not very nice data, but we have to see them and then try to see how we can go beyond this and what are the things that we can structure to really build the kind of object that I was explaining in the previous slide. So this is a very fresh statistics that came up from the European Parliament that is related to gender, and then it's related to the fact that in the European Union, how what does a woman earn compared to a man? Okay, and this statistic shows you that while men earns 100%, women earns way less, except with the only exception of the Luxembourg, where women earn more than men. There is a gap that is, of course, terrible, and you see that in Latvia, Austria, the women earn only 80% of the salary of a man. Okay, and I'm not showing this just to show you the gender imbalance, but also to show you some results related to the geography of the European Union, that it's not always as we think, that countries of the north that are richer, they do better in terms of gender balance, a country of the south that are poorer, they do not, or the west or the east, they do not do well. It's more scattered than that, okay? For example, you see that actually Italy is not doing that bad in these statistics, with women earning 98% of the salary of men, and other countries that are richer, such as Germany, they are not doing very well, okay? And you can also have countries that are like Romania, that is in terms of gross product, not doing that great in the European Union, but is doing quite well in terms of gender gap between salary of men and women. So problems are complex, even in terms of the geography. And these very recent statistics of the European Parliament that came up, I've seen it 2 months ago on the website, and I put it in the presentation now, refer to data that are of 2023. So not data that are not coming from a very far past, and compiled by trust source as the European Parliament. Okay, so this is the first not nice news that I want to share. But then we have we can talk about academic pipeline that are leaking for women also in academia, to go a little bit more specifically in our domain. So what we see is that we lose in academia, when we discuss about gender, contributions by women colleagues at different career stage. Okay, so if we have that the pipeline is, let's say, almost gender balance at the level of the graduate school, then when we go at the PhD receipt to the assistant professor tenure track, we see that women and women with babies and women married, they tend to have 30% and 20% entrance in tenure track position. This is already at this level. And then with the associate professor tenured, we still leak more, and we have 23% less than men, and then 25% more, they become full professors. So we go towards this cascading impact, and at the end we have very few women that are at the top of the career as full professor tenured. So these are statistics that I've taken by the CERN website. So are statistics that are done by our colleague in Geneva. And this leaking pipe is not only in the senior position, but is reflected in also other things, such as journal editorship, organizing committees, conference talks, and of course we can also see there are statistics that here I'm not showing because they are a bit more complex, that show that even when we get at this stage, still there is the gap in the salaries. Okay, so it's there are several level of gap. Yes, then if we look at this again in terms of geographical distribution for the European data, we can see that countries like the one that we were seeing that had good salary between women and men, like for example Italy, they have less than 50% in terms of women in science and technology. So you see that there is a huge discrepancy also in this field, and more or less, if we take globally without dividing by career stage, all the field of with that the acronym is STEM, we can see that there is a sort of gender balance. But then we have to propagate in the leaking pipe, where we see that this gender balance goes down with the career stage, okay? And it's not homogeneous between different between countries. Here there is a sort of good news that is that the number of women working in STEM field has increased in 2021 with respect to 2011 by 14%, and the number of men has not increased by the same proportion, only by 10%. So there is some tendency towards the gender balance. But this is not, so this talk is not just about gender balance, because I remember that the idea was to address more general the concept of diversity. And I want to also look at these other statistics, that is the proportion of the US population that is black, okay, and then the proportion in chemistry of this population that becomes full professor. And you can see again here that between black population of the US and those who really made it to the pipeline, only 1.6%, so 10 times less than the population, make it as a full professor in chemistry in the top school in the US. Okay, so this is a continuous leak that comes from um, each career stage. So you can see the bachelor degrees, they are already only 8% with respect to the 12 that is in the population, American population, that get to the bachelor degrees, then only 4.5 receive a PhD, only 3 becomes postdoc, and only 1 get to the professorship. This is also interesting. And sorry, I wanted to go here to other kind of leaking pipeline for sexual minorities who start the university specializing in science. And you can see that if we take straight population, they stay in STEM, that is again this science, technology, engineering, and maths. And instead, if the sexual minority, for the 40%, they leave these fields and they go to do works that are unrelated with their study background. Okay, so this is another data that shows that there is not only the gender pipeline, but there are many. Okay, and we have to address all of them if we want to talk about really taking into account the diversity in this problem. Then there is another interesting statistics, that is the career intentions and reason. This is again data that come from McKinsey, so from the United States, and are data that show the intentions of the colleagues with respect to their sexual orientation and with respect to their gender. So here you have let's look at the first line. The 45% of straight men that want to be a top executive, only the 1/3 of straight women want to be top executive, and 37% of LGBT women want to be top executive. 45% of LGBTQ plus men want to be top executive. So it's interesting to see what are already the intentions. This is related to the background, okay? Because in principle, we should expect that there is no difference in who wants to be, of course, top executive, right? Then the opportunity of success in impact the success in my company. 7% of straight men thinks that they can impact their success of their company, but only 60% of LGBT men. Okay, so between men, straight, and LGBT, they had the same proportion that wanted to be top executive in their company, but already we lost 10% of LGBT men that thinks that they can have a success in their company. And this is the same proportion of straight women, and it's way less for LGBTQ plus women that think that they can have impact the success of their company. It's even different when we talk about opportunity to be a role model for others like me, and you see here that is the reverse pipeline, and opportunity to have a positive impact in the world, it's the reverse pipeline. Okay, so we see that of course these are related to the construction that comes from the society where these different pools have grown up. In this case, the United States, because uh, the um, the survey was made for the United States. But if we take a diverse and inclusive society, there is no reason a priori why this number, of course, should be different. Then again, something that is linked on how experience onlyness, how we feel that we are different from the others, okay? We are often or almost always the only one in the room of their category. So only the 5% of straight white men that have different race, ethnicity, and orientation feel this experience of onlyness, but then this goes in very different proportion when we have men that have different orientation, they have different race of ethnicity, and of course when we have women, LGBTQ plus women, LGBT plus women of color. So you see that here again we are growing in this sense of loneliness and holiness that we have in this group, and that of course straight white men don't feel only or lonely in this kind of statistics where we have escalating this percentage with other groups. Another point that these amazing statistics that is one of the few that I found so complete have done is about sexual harassment versus diversity. So you see that when we look at the proportion of colleagues that experience sexual harassment, we find sexual harassment, of course, in all groups: straight men, LGBTQ plus men, straight women, lesbian women, LGBTQ plus women overall, and bisexual women. And you can see that this is growing in this direction, and that it's decreasing in this direction. Okay, so microaggression somehow experienced by all in different way, but then when we being pressured to play along or participate in sexual discussion, humor, or actions, this grows. This is little, it's 5%, sort of this 5% confidence interval that we have, but then it grows to something that is more significant towards these different groups. And there is no reason, again, why this should be. Actually, there is no reason. Here we should be all, the group should be all below this 5%. Aggression should never be something that one experience at work, but we see that there are disparities and huge disparities between the groups. Then some statistics in times. No, we're seeing that with the data of the European Parliament, that despite these movements coming from different horizons, feminism, LGBT communities, different ethnic groups growing in time, we could expect that there is some kind of now equity. But actually, if we just look at gender statistics that are the easiest to obtain, we see that after 2007, for the number of doctoral degrees earned by women with respect to men, there is a sort of plateau in many disciplines, and we cannot go. In fact, we don't reach the balance that we should reach. And so this data again stopped in 2017, but actually things are not going in better from the statistics. But this is nice because you can really see by discipline that we get stuck in some scheme where we have only a certain part of the cake that is balanced and not all. And then let me read this United Nations 2023 report because here the data stop in 2017. The latest Gender Social Norm Index report has revealed no improvement in biases against women in a decade, with almost 9 out of 10 men and women worldwide still holding such biases today. Half of people worldwide still believe men make better political leaders than women, and more than 40% believe men make better business executive than women. So although I don't have the time series, this is the report 2023, and we can see in the distribution of the political leaders all over the world that in fact we are confronted to way more men than women when we look at these um, meetings such as the G20 or the G8 or whatever. So now I will go a bit towards the conclusion and with some positive message because we have the instrument, of course, to build a better world, and we have to use the definition. We have just simply to apply the intersection of the definitions that I given at the beginning. That is, of course, I'm not given by me, but it's what exists out there, and um, uh, it also allows me to recap some concept. No? Inclusion is about the fact that thoughts, ideas, and perspective of all individuals matter. Okay, equity, that is the fact that constantly and consistently we recognize and redistributing power. Remembers the stairs that have different types because we have to redistribute the power of collecting the fruits. And then this diversity, multiple identities represented in the same organization. When we have this element in our organization at each level, we create belongings. Belonging, it means that no one feels this concept of loneliness that is, oh my God, I'm alone with my background in this institution, in this research environment, or whatever, and avoids some bias that is the dominant group or ideology is used. The fact that we have cultural a priori on how things will go, and that we have too much similarities in the way we build our group. Okay, so if we use this simple concept of inclusion, diversity, and equity in every group that we manage, build, or participate in, we create an effect of belonging where everyone feels is participating and we move towards a better accomplishment of the task that we have to make. Okay, and so how we do that? Okay, so we have to, this is simple, okay? We can do it in meetings, we can do it in when we are in a committee, hiring colleagues, and the idea is to ask ourselves questions, okay? And questions and being open, honest, vulnerable, and be also open to embrace conversation that can be challenging. So we enter in a room and we ask if we want to address the diversity, who is in the room, okay? And try really to not have preconcept on this. And then equity asks the question, who is trying to get in the room but can't, which we can rephrase this in another way. If I have a room and I have a pool of people that I've selected for a task in the room, am I having all the spectrum of people, okay, that should participate in this discussion? Do I have the good representation? Or I just have a subset that I have selected with some bias? And then, even if I have all the subset that makes the best diverse group in the room, have I heard the opinion of all and in a equal way? Okay, so giving this equity that all the opinion deserve. If we use these three concepts and these three questions when we build organization, group, and have these simple rules, then we can progress towards equity. This answering these questions sometimes can be also doing technical things that are not trivial. For example, when we do meeting in the EGU Council, it's very nice. We have a first slide that say it reminds exactly this concept in some sense. That say like, okay, if you feel tired, stressed, or overwhelmed, just take a break. Okay, the break is a mechanism that if you have discussions that are going too much in one direction, you have someone who is speaking a lot, and you feel that not everyone's voice has been heard, can put back the let's say the point on saying, okay, like we should make a break and then start again with fresh ideas and hear everyone's opinion. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to say is that we make assumption. We have these social constructs that make us to judge people as soon as we see them, okay? Based on the way, what they are, how they appear, what they are wearing, the first things they say. And this is something that, of course, can go very far from what actually, how the people perceive themselves, okay? So, having an attitude of also saying, I will have the question that also like is like not only who is in the room, but also how these people, what are the feeling of the people in the room, how they perceive themselves, okay, how they can act and without beyond what is my judgment of them, okay, and try to be as open as possible with respect to this question. There are statistics, for example, that show that more than 80% of the handicap, physical handicap, are not visible, okay, and they do not show up, of course, when we see someone. So we can also have, we can think to talk to someone who has no handicap, and instead there is some handicap, and if we start from the concept that there is no handicap, then we are starting with a misconcept, okay? So, and this, of course, is also can be brought down to all the other things that were in the first slide that I was presenting. Okay, so then what is EGU doing for promoting this concept and also recognizing this the importance of equality, diversity, and inclusion? Well, we have an equality, diversity, and inclusion committee that is chaired in this moment by Lisa Wingate, that I've seen connected before. I don't know if Lisa is still here. And there is there are activities and there are EDI sessions that are presented every year at the General Assembly. So the activity runs all over the years. And of course, there are lots going on. with the EDI sessions at the General Assembly every year. And the idea is really to build this world where everyone's opinion is heard, regardless the background that we have seen that affects basically all the steps of the pipelines where we are involved in terms of researchers. I also invite to look at the EGU website to find this information, and of course we can share the link in the chat. And yes, and I think that was all the things that I wanted to say, and can be incomplete, can be, of course, just partial. I give you a few example of pipeline and leaking pipeline, showing a diversity of things that we normally we don't take into account and that can affect our environment, and very simple way to go over this and to build a diverse environment and inclusive environment that is just stop, let's stop and ask ourselves these few questions: who is in the room? Do I have the good team in the room, or there is some I just created a subset based on social construction and whatever, and then even if I have the good team, is am I hearing everyone voice to build this? And then of course let's accept sometimes that we may not have done things in the proper way. Let's step back. Let's assume that we can be in error and that we learn as we go in this process. And if we do this, I think that we will live in a better environment, and better environment for all of us, whether we belong to any of the group or none of this group. Many thanks for your attention. And of course, if you have questions, comments, complaints, I'm happy to answer if I can, or just to discuss with you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Davide. That was awesome. Is there any question that you guys want to ask, either in the chat, or I guess you can probably raise your hand too? Yes, Simon.
Hello. So I wanted to quickly ask about so it's great that these, I think, webinars and courses are held, and there's obviously community building that really helps building these networks as well. But I think
La pomme de terre.
one occurring issue is, I think people who probably need to hear this most probably aren't the ones who generally attend these webinars, etc. I wonder if you have any advice about perhaps reaching out to people who may be less interested in these topics, or perhaps like should we be trying to reach out to everyone, or there's some people who can probably have better success with, etc. Just generally your thoughts on reaching out like that.
Yeah, so about reaching, I think that what the I really liked that at EGU, in the EGU Council, for example, we have these slides that reminds this concept of taking into account the diversity when and the inclusiveness when we do our meeting. So for the IPCC that I'm also participating, we had a very nice presentation on exactly the same concept as the one I am giving today. Better, perhaps because it was given by a professional. So I see that I think that one way of advancing is to repeat this kind of webinar also in like session of conferences, workshops, whatever, when we have all the participants in the room and we have a little time dedicated to explaining what are these concepts, okay? So a concrete example could be that if we organize a summer school or a campfire with the EG or whatever we want in terms of event organization, there is a little space that we can allocate to remind this concept and to set up some rules based on what I was discussing at the end, and that these rules are understood by the participant, and this I think it's already make this feeling of not onlyness that some all of us, I would say, have experienced at a point in our life. So uh, maybe not having this long format all the time of webinars, but having short capsule that we can prepare for our event. Even individual meeting could be nice to have one slide about this practice, because division meeting can be overwhelming for some people, and I think that it could be good to have a small capsule of this EDI principle that we can export to our meetings. I don't know if it answers your question, Simon, but
There is a question from Lisa that is, how do you and the BG division think we can enhance belonging at the EGU and during the General Assembly?
Yes, I think that this question of belonging, it's something that we are addressing at least in well, in my division, in the nonlinear processes, but I see also you are doing in the BG and in other division. The best way of doing it is to try to have to diversify the at the level of the division. I will say the officer pool, the deputy, the early career scientist, and ensures that they come from different horizon. I say horizon here to not repeat all the things that are in the EDI. So if there is already some sort of diverse team at the level of the in the structure of the division, then this propagates towards the structure of the division. And then, of course, one thing can be that, as I was saying, in this in the division meeting, because this is one of the moment that we have as divisions. When we chair the meeting, try to hear all the voices, try to give if there are many people raising their hands for something, give priorities to the voices that have not been heard, to wait or also few seconds, because we have someone who is always raising the heads and want to take some space, and instead if we wait a little bit we have more hands raising and then we can hear more voices. So I think that at the end there is not just a single answer, but we can have this kind of practice that are very basic. I'm thinking that I'm saying like but sometimes we forget just that they exist, and we want to go fast, and we want to have answers, questions, we want to make things dynamics, but instead the suggestion is like wait and see that everyone opinions can emerge, that we can reach an agreement, and sometimes this is not fast but takes a little bit of time, and some people do not want to be on the spotlight but still they want to express their opinion, and I think this is important. Another point, perhaps to complete this answer, would be like give more different way of providing feedbacks on our activities or participating. It's already good that the EGU is hybrid, for example, so those who cannot travel, those who don't want to travel can still participate. And another point can be like to have um, support for people that have handicap, people that have child care, things that we start to have at the EGU. Think really open what can be and if we have all these voices and we have a diverse team in the EGU council, in the EGU structure, then these questions will come up somehow automatically, and we will be able to address because everyone voice will be already there.
Thanks, Davide. I have another question in the chat regarding your hypothesis that we should expect all genders to equally want to be top executive. I believe this undermines our diversities, for example, physiological, genetic, which all play a role in our personality and aspirations and goals. Is it not more important that all are offered equitable chances to be top executives than to achieve actual gender balance in top executives?
Perhaps we can stop here because I see
Yeah.
that. Yeah, no, I mean, this question was a bit tricky. I like it to put it there because it raises a lot of questions. First, the first question is why we want to be top executive, right? But what I wanted to say is that not all should be, I think that the point is that we don't want all to be top executive, but there is perhaps no reason why, given just by these indicators that are social construction or gender construction, there should be some kind of difference in the statistics. We should expect that not all disproportion, but a small proportion equally distributed among the different groups should reach this. So I agree in some sense. We should not always, I mean, there is no reason why we want to be top executive, but there is no reason why there should be difference linked to physiology and genetic on how we reach these categories.
And then the second part of the question is about salary. I agree in that all should equitably be given the chance to get the same salary. Ideally, this means equal salary scales for all genders in public institutes. But in the private sector, with which I am less familiar, I suppose that would be down to the negotiating abilities of each individual. I myself am a poor negotiator and therefore earn less than average salary for my career stage and educations. Thus, I earn less than most men and women, which I guess is fairly reflective of my skills and personality. Are skills and other such factors taken into account in current EDI studies?
Yes, but skill, and so I think that the problem is that your skill, the way you acquire your skill to then go to the negotiation, should not depend on your. If we go to this concept of equity, you should receive a set of skills that are independent on your social background, your gender, and so on, to then do the negotiation. So yes, there could be difference in the salary of individuals if this is the way the rules of the game are, but there is no reason again why this difference should be then reflected on the gender, on the sexual orientation, or whatever. Independently on the gender, on the sexual orientation, everyone should have the same chances to get the ability to negotiate their salary. That's what I was implying, and I think that should be the main point. If then at the end there are differences, fine, but we should not be able to see this difference in indicators that come from gender, sexual orientation, social origin, and so on and so forth, if there is equity.
Alors, there's another question that is, how can barriers on diversity and inclusiveness be made visible if they are often even unknown or hard to grasp for the people affected? And how this be made visible to the work environment without this demanding task always being primarily the problem of the affected persons?
This is a very good questions, and of course, the things that I learned when I did manager formation, I don't know, for class on the handicap, was like that sometimes is difficult to talk about handicap, talk about problems when you have employees that do not want to, but the approach is, I think that is fair, is that if there is something that could affect a work environment, for example, an handicap that doesn't allow to do some task, this should be should at a certain point emerge, not by those who suffer the handicap, but the fact that the work environment should be devised to be again accessible, independent on the all the problems that we are saying before. So if this is not the case at the beginning, then again there is this list of questions we can go through when we build an organization and an event that exists by other studies, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and that tell us like a list of things that we should ensure that are covered, technical barriers, physical barriers, mental barriers, okay? And if we go through this list, then we are okay with most of the things, and we can be confident that we have organized an event that respect these rules. But again, there is not a single solution. This depends on what you manage, how you organize, and also on all the previous barriers that could be there for historical reasons. So it's an analysis that cannot be taken light. It must be done with respect to the environment group of situations you are constructing. So it can be tricky. But again, you can start from these questions and see how they've been addressed in the past and what you can do to improve it towards this concept of inclusivity and diversity representation.
There is a question from Getachew that is there a good way to help those always in the front, raising hands, to give space for other voices?
Yes, I mean, here you have to manage a little bit as you can, but normally taking the time, I've seen in my own experience that is a good strategy. So and also looking at the back, yes, you will see that if you leave time, some more questions, some more reflection will emerge. And another point can be what I do normally is that, for example, to foster the early career senior balance, that sometimes can also be tricky, I say explicitly when I chair something that I give the priority to the questions coming from the early career scientist first.
And Davide, I'd love to ask you a question. I was many years in the US where in some states it's allowed to have diversity hires. Like in some states it's a positive quota where they look at the diversity in the academy, the university, and sometimes they're like, we can't hire more of this category because we have already too much and we need to hire like Black women or whatnot. And in California, it's a bit different where you can't hire based on the identity, but you can hire based on how much, what they propose to do and how much they've done for marginalized populations in academia. And I'm not aware, and I don't know if it's because it doesn't exist or it depends on the institution of such things in Europe. Do you see some, and for example, well, I don't want to talk just about France here, but are you aware of some stuff like that? And otherwise, is it just based on like people that are PI and who they hire that to increase diversity, which like feels not very robust?
Yeah, thanks for this question. And you've seen that I presented many data from the US because in the US is allowed to have these statistics, for example, by sexual orientation, and in Europe, not really. And same, you cannot ask. It's in some law of the privacy of the European Union. It basically you cannot ask individuals for their sexual orientation in the work environment, and so on and so forth. So you will see it also when you answer some polls in the US. You have many options, and you can go to many background about your ethnicity and so on and so forth. In Europe, I think you can do it with polls, but you cannot use the data. You cannot collect the data by individuals
But
because this is
even
a
with
violation.
gender, let's say you're right, but let's say one that we are allowed, like, oh, sex.
Uh,
Then is there stuff in place where institutions are asked to look at their gender fraction, proportion, and then to have hires based on that?
I think this is nation dependent. I know in Italy, I don't want to get it terribly wrong. There is some law that foster the gender balance in both directions. So you have what they call quota rosa, quota blue. In the domains where there are more women than men, they try to hire more men, and vice versa. So that's but I think these are national regulations, and I don't want to say wrong things, but I know that one of the barrier in Europe is that you cannot have data by ethnicity based on individuals that then you can use at work. This is something that your boss should not know. But there are policies to foster diversity. For example, what I followed as guidelines to have for example, to detect possible handicap in work environment and how to help the people to work better in this kind of condition.
Thank you so much. Well, we've reached our time. And I see on top of that, there is no more question. Oh, one from Sylvia.
Hey, sorry. It's thank you very much for the talk. It was super interesting. And I'm also involved in gender and science group where we are more focused on women. And I have more a comment than than a question. I'm gonna do this straight man comment, sorry. No, like lately there was a paper published in 2022. It's more an opinion paper that talks about the leaky pipeline as something that it's quite passive. No, and as you show in your data, there's a lot of more aggressions and everything. So they propose, instead of talking about a leaky pipeline, to do like the metaphor of the hostile course, obstacle course or something like. Maybe I can send it to you, but I think it's quite nice to change this idea of that it's something very basic, not very passive, with that looks like it's more our choice to leave academia than no reaction of the experiences that we have. So maybe I can put it on the chat. But thank you very much. It was super interesting and to see all this wider data that you were showing.
Many leaking pipelines, but sure, yes, you leak because we find the hostile environment, and it's never over. I can tell you can think that when we reach our level, things go better, but actually we experience leaking pipelines, and then we say like, oh, and yes, just to finish, it happens also. I'm thinking to something that is happening to me personally, but we have also this experience of feeling guilty for things that instead are we enter in a hostile environment and we tend to think that is our fault and to say like, oh no, it's me, I'm wrong, but in fact no. And yeah, so I'm just thinking that sometimes what you say, it's very, very important, and sometimes we end up not sleeping at night because we find the fault in ourselves and not in the system. And instead, sometimes it's a fault in the system and we are in a hostile environment, and we should not be negotiating that. We should say that the fault is on the system and try to change it the right way and not just to step back.
I see a question from Anna. In Germany, there are dedicated funds specifically for women to become group leaders, professors. It was a comment. And then thank you so much. Bomba, I'm using Mohammed's comment to close that session. Thank you so much, Davide.
Thanks. I hope it was useful. And for me, it's always very interesting and more to see your questions than to say what I have to say. So thanks a lot for this kind of invitation.
Thank you so much. It was really great.